It was so fast, you know what I mean?
I got mugged.
One of the risks of playing poker is the unwanted attention of those wanting a piece of the action, and I'm not talking about winning it fairly. As Doyle Brunson once said, the hardest part is not winning the money, but actually keeping it. In this video, we look at 17 instances when poker players were shockingly looted and mugged. Number 1. In 2010, the PokerStars EPT Berlin came to an abrupt halt in the action at around 2:30 p.m. when a group of armed men raided the Grand Hyatt Hotel in Berlin where the tournament was being held.
There was a full house at the European Poker Tour in Berlin over the weekend, and the last thing anyone expected was an armed invasion complete with handguns and a machete.
The men were after the money, and no one was seriously injured in the accident. Tables were flipped so people could hunker behind them while chips flew all over the floor. Players, staff, and media in the ballroom took cover and then began frantically making their way to the back corner of the room to an exit. After about 15 minutes of mayhem in the tournament area, things began to settle down while the tournament room itself looked as though a tornado had whipped through it. Hundreds of players, staff, and media were scattered in the lobby of the hotel and outside on the streets awaiting confirmation that things were safe. A few people had some minor bumps and bruises from the stampede that tried to exit the room, but no one was seriously injured. The thieves got away with 242,000 euros. It was an easy target for the bandits because the organizers did not pay attention to adequately protect the money which was on display in the lobby. No shots were fired, and the suspects quickly fled after a security guard intervened. After the terror on the scene settled, players were asked to continue play only a few hours later, including the 20 remaining players in the EPT Berlin main event. The tournament was eventually won by Kevin McPhee. Shortly after the robbery, the German police released photos of the bandits, which was obtained from the hotel's video footage. In the following days, one of the robbers gave himself up and named the others. After this, the other robbers eventually gave themselves up too. Upon being questioned about the robbery, the robbers eventually named the mastermind behind the whole operation. The mastermind behind this operation was Ibrahim Al-Musa, who was arrested soon after. Ibrahim was sentenced to 6 years 4 months for armed robbery. Ibrahim's lawyers stated that it was the biggest mistake in the defendant's life and he regretted his actions since and also repaid 22,000 euros since the robbery. The rest of the money has still not yet been found. Number 2. Flying into Vegas for some high-stakes action at Bobby's room with Gus Hansen, Daniel Cates aka Jungleman fancied a late-night snack and headed out into the Vegas streets. Jungleman told this incident on Joe Ingram's podcast. On his way back from eating, Daniel was smacked in the face by some guys and demanded his wallet. The thief stole his wallet and ran away. Cates said that he was in his senses and did not fight them because that would have been a really stupid idea.
Nothing happened, you're okay?
I'm okay. I just got punched a few times, but I was like kind of shocked. I didn't know how to deal with it. I mean, at the time, after I kind of wish I don't know, yelled for help or whatever, but I just was like, oh, here, take my wallet.
Daniel seemed a bit shaken by the incident, unsure what to do at the time. Though he was fortunate, things didn't turn out worse and contacted the police afterwards. Vegas is regularly in the top 20% of American cities when it comes to crime stats. Violent crimes around 62% higher than the national average. Just a few days after this incident, Randy Liu aka Nananako's car was also broken into. Randy Liu claimed he had little to lose and almost made a joke of the incident. Number 3. On October 10, 2021, Shaun Deeb took to Twitter to report that there was a break-in in his hotel room in the early parts of the morning. An intruder broke into his hotel room at the Rio around 6:30 a.m. and ran away when Deeb woke up and tried to confront him. The intruder managed to run away and disappear rather quickly. Deeb said that he immediately reported the break-in to the Rio staff and said he wanted to see if Rio security will be able to find the intruder with the CCTV footage. His post received a lot of attention on Twitter as a number of poker players also shared instances in the past where they felt the security and service at the Rio all-suit was well below par. However, there was also some reporting bias at work. The reason so many players are aware of these occurrences at the Rio is because So many of the players spend so much time on the property during the WSOP. This creates something of a feedback loop that may amplify the situation as it pertains to the Rio specifically. The WSOP brought thousands of players over to the Rio, and all of them come with money in some form or the other. Criminals are very well aware that poker players staying at the Rio all suit and those playing at the WSOP will have either their cards or cash on them or in their rooms. This is one of the reasons why the WSOP asks poker players to be vigilant at all times and why the Rio tends to increase security during the tournament. However, it appeared that these measures were not good enough based on the number of complaints that were coming in on Deeb's post over the security failings at the Rio. Number 4. On December 2011, the poker world was shocked to find out that 2010 WSOP main event champion Jonathan Duhamel has been bound, beaten and robbed at his Montreal home. According to Duhamel's account, the robbers forced their way into the house early in the morning, then started to attack him. Eventually, they tied him up and began hitting the poker pro repeatedly until he told him where the valuables were. Duhamel was forced to give them access to his safe, where the thieves absconded with his main event bracelet, a Rolex Submariner watch that had been presented to him by PokerStars, and approximately about $115,000 in cash. In a stunning turn of events, it was later found out that Bianca Rojas, who was Jonathan Duhamel's ex, was the mastermind behind this incident. Shortly after winning the WSOP main event in 2010, Jonathan met Rojas, who allegedly posed as a medical student in order to impress him. She moved in with him in March of 2011, but the relationship would end in August following a spat. This wasn't the end of the story between the duo, however. In early December, Rojas spoke to a female acquaintance and the genesis of the robbery was discussed. Duhamel immediately suspected Rojas was behind the incident and told the police the day after the robbery. Authorities obtained text messages from Rojas's acquaintance which cast her as the mastermind of the attack. On Christmas Eve, Rojas was taken into custody and she almost immediately rolled over on her co-conspirators. Two men, John Stephen Clark and Anthony Bork, were apprehended shortly thereafter in a Montreal hotel after apparently spending large amounts of money on partying. Much of the money stolen was recovered, and a few months later, a badly damaged WSOP main event bracelet was recovered near a dumpster with Duhamel's last name scratched off. WSOP officials later gave Duhamel a replacement bracelet. In September of 2011, Bianca eventually pleaded guilty to the charges and was sentenced to 42 months in prison, followed by a 3-year probation. Number 5. In August of 2020, an Arizona woman was arrested for allegedly stealing about $1 million in cash and valuables from poker pro Antonio Esfandiari. Antonio and his father reported a number of things missing from their Panorama Towers condo on July 14th. Included in the inventory was $150,000 in cash, about $500,000 in casino chips, jewelry, watches, and a gold suitcase, and his 2012 WSOP Big One for One Drop bracelet. However, the accused woman left several clues behind that quickly led to her arrest. Esfandiari informed police about a rumor that he had heard that the woman, who works as a poker dealer in Arizona, had been to Las Vegas to play in a private poker game. The game's host kept track of the players and their buy-ins in a ledger. The woman, Svetlana Silva, bought in for $5,000, signing her name in the record. After she busted, she ponied up another $20,000. She lost twice more, each time buying in for another $30,000. So right there was a huge red flag. After running out of cash, police said that someone drove her to a Las Vegas apartment from where she got a safe. She then went back to the poker game and bought back in with $100,000 worth of Aria chips. Silva lost again and used $200,000 in Bellagio chips to keep playing. She finally won some money, cashed out, and left. Before Silva left the game, another player cashed out and was given some of the cash and casino chips she bought in the game. She then actually sent the guy a text telling him that the chips are marked and will be flagged by a casino's computer to prevent someone else from cashing them out. She offered to buy back her Aria chips. When Silva was arrested in the Aria parking garage, police found multiple $25,000 Bellagio and Aria chips and large amounts of cash on her. Silva was booked into the Clark County Detention Center on charges of burglary and possession of stolen property. Number 6. Our next story is pretty insane because the odds of that happening are slim to none. On November 30th, 2013, the New York Post reported that poker player Eric Riley was robbed not once, but twice in what seemed like a routine trip to the airport. According to the report, Riley was being given a ride to JFK International Airport in New York from a friend named Junior. When the two arrived at the airport, Riley hopped out of the car to retrieve his bag from the trunk where it was being stored during the transport. However, Junior sped away with the trunk wide open after Riley got out of the car, but before he was able to retrieve his bag, the bag that contained $100,000 in cash. Riley was quick to act and hopped in the first cab he saw, instructing the driver to quickly follow Junior's vehicle. After catching up with the car at a red light, Riley hopped out of the cab, ran to Junior's car, and grabbed his bag from the wide open trunk. It was then that things escalated, even more so for Riley. After that, a black car reportedly pulled up to the scene, two men inside claiming to be undercover cops and offered help to Riley in form of a ride. Riley got into the car with the two men only to have a gun pulled on him. The men demanded that Riley give them the bag of money, but Riley clung tightly to his belongings before leaping from the car. After gathering himself, Riley got into a second cab where he was taken to the police to report the incident. Number 7. On July 1st, 2019, professional poker player Joe Salvaggi shared his tragic and terrifying experience on Twitter, claiming that he was robbed at gunpoint outside the Rio. In an exclusive interview with 13 Action News, Salvaggi said that his attacker was dressed in camouflage as he shoved a gun in his face and ordered Salvaggi to turn over his backpack. Joe said that his backpack included the keys to his rental car as well as $8,000 in cash and chips that he had won playing poker at the WSOP. He stated on Twitter that he believed that the robbery was pre-planned and that police have the theft on surveillance video. However, it appeared they may not be able to track the thief. The social media reaction to Salvaggi's misfortune had been mixed. While many have been sympathetic to Joe's plight, others felt that some of the blame has to be taken by the poker player since he was carrying cash. Defending himself, Joe said,
As a cash game grinder, as we call it in our industry, we just have to have cash on it and hand at all times or else, we can't play.
Many have also blamed the Rio and WSOP for not providing adequate security in the parking lots. Although terrifying, this tragedy should serve as a lesson for all the players in the desert city, especially those who are competing in the WSOP. According to the advice given by security experts, people should gamble with a friend by their side, players should be wary of overly friendly people, and that they should always be aware of their surroundings. Number 8. On May 2018, longtime poker pro Tapio Vihakas posted on the 2+2 forum about an incident at the Party Poker Live Millions in Barcelona. Tapio was staying in Hotel Ars during the tournament. He claimed that he had 4,700 euros in his laptop bag. While he was out with his wife, housekeeping cleaned the room. Next morning, as he was about to transfer money from his laptop bag to his wallet, he noticed 2,000 euros were missing. Upon calling the reception and the manager about the incident, the manager gave a generic reply that they trust their employees 100% and that the theft was not committed by their staff. Then Tapio made a rating on TripAdvisor where he told that the hotel staff stole from him. The hotel gave an email address to contact where he got contacted by a lawyer threatening to sue Tapio if he continued to trash talk about their clients, Hotel Arts. This is not the first time poker players experience shady activity in the hotel while playing in Barcelona. Back in 2013, high-stakes PLO pro Jens Kjolin got his laptop hacked in the same hotel. Even though most forum members agreed with Tapio, some were criticizing him for staying in a hotel with such a bad reputation and being irresponsible to keep large sums of cash in a hotel room. Number 9. In October of 2010, former WSOP November 9er Scott Montgomery was robbed by a man in the restroom during a break from a tournament that he was participating in. Montgomery became a well-known poker player when he was part of the 2008 November 9, in which he finished 5th in the main event for $3.1 million. It seems that the mugger picked his victim well, targeting the poker pro while he was alone in the bathroom. According to the player's Twitter account, a guy pulled a knife on him while they were in the restroom, and after he emptied the $2,000 out of his wallet and handed it to his attacker, the man left. Scott told his Twitter account followers what he was told by the security, saying that they basically told him, "Oh well, life sucks, have a nice day." Many players pointed out that the Bellagio should take some responsibility for the incident, considering that it took the security almost 15 minutes to show up at the scene. Number 10. In 2010, professional poker player Carter Phillips was involved in a bizarre and frightening incident during the 2010 EPT Barcelona stop. William Reynolds, a professional poker player and a friend of Phillips who grinds on PokerStars, took to the 2+2 message boards to explain the strange event that apparently gave Phillips reason to reconsider his current line of work. According to Reynolds, he and Phillips and a fellow player, Kavian Payman, had gone to a bar in Barcelona during the time off between the events of EPT Barcelona. When leaving the bar, Payman was hit by a trio of thieves who helped themselves to 4,000 euros from his pocket, then took off. The group of poker players, never once to give up without a struggle, gave chase. The pickpockets escaped into a subway entrance near a restaurant and slammed on the security gates, leaving Payman, Reynolds, and Phillips stranded on the outside. Desperate to get to the crooks, they started banging the restaurant's metal door, hoping to get some help from the workers that were inside. In his frustration, Payman punched the window. The consequence of this last action was far from the desired outcome, as two Spanish men soon emerged through the door carrying a frying pan and an 18-inch machete. Unable to communicate effectively with the three poker players, the restaurant workers started threatening them with their weapons. Payman apparently took a smash to the head with the frying pan, but the Spaniards retreated soon after realizing the trio of poker players meant no harm. Phillips has been the target of a lot of criticism since the story came out on the forums. Many commenters, while being sympathetic about Payman's loss in the initial robbery, feel that the three players acted foolishly and put themselves in a dangerous situation which wasn't necessary. Number 11. Four-time World Poker Tour champion Darren Elias and his family were given quite the scare in March of 2019 when a man with a gun broke into his New Jersey home. The robber focused his attention on the 19-year-old babysitter who was minding the couple's kids because Elias and his wife were not at home at the time. The suspect, identified as 24-year-old North Philadelphia resident Shannon Soroka, allegedly forced entry into the house and led the babysitter around with a gun to her back looking for cash and other valuables. Soroka eventually locked her in the bathroom. The teenager apparently escaped from a window and called 911 from a neighbor's house before Soroka fled the scene by car. Soroka was later arrested after investigators received a tip. It does appear that Darren Elias was specifically targeted in this incident. Soroka, meanwhile, was a part-time poker player who had a few small scores of his own, cashing for $19,000 since the start of 2017. It turned out that he had ran up serious debts totaling tens of thousands of dollars through gambling. Soroka faced a long list of serious charges and was lucky to only receive a 13-year sentence. Number 12. In December of 2012, Danish poker pro Theo Jorgensen was shot in a home robbery. The attack occurred at about 10 p.m. on Sunday, December 2nd, as three men forced their way into Jorgensen's home about 21 kilometers south of Copenhagen. Theo and his wife were just relaxing at the time. Three men, wearing elephant masks, barged in and demanded money. Obviously not wanting the terror to escalate, Theo directed the intruders to the money they had on the premises. The Dane forked out what amounted to $6,200 in cash. However, the robbers were unhappy with this amount, and one of them shot Jorgensen in the leg 3 times. His wife, who witnessed the entire scene, called the police immediately after the robbers took off. They arrived too late to catch the criminals, but Jorgensen was quickly driven to the hospital. Luckily, he recovered in a few weeks' time. All 3 suspects were male, and no one was apprehended according to reports. He later pointed out that he was a cautious man and had taken precautions against such a theft, including installing alarms. He, however, conceded that his efforts had unfortunately proved not to be enough. Number 13. On February 10, 2021, poker pro Chad Power's phone went off with an alert from his home security system. By opening the alert, Chad was able to watch from afar as 2 men walked out of his house with a safe on their shoulders. According to the police, Chad did not recognize either men. He could be sure of this fact because, as the police put it, both suspects had lowered or removed their face masks at this point and their faces were visible. The safe was an impressive haul for the 2 criminals. Inside the safe, according to Chad, were about $750,000 in cash and $250,000 worth of high-value poker chips. Chad Power believed he was followed home from the casino, and the robbers waited until he left home before carrying out their operation. Thanks to the mask slip-up, police were able to match the perpetrator's face to Chat Power surveillance footage. One of the perps named Brewer was a suspect in one case that saw $15,000 stolen in a similar raid, and the CCTV footage from Chat Power's home matched Brewer and his known gang associate Trevon Battle. Brewer's phone records also placed him near Power's house of residence on the date of the robbery. He was connected to the purchase of 2 new cars in the last few months that were bought in cash and registered in his mother's name. Police arrested him 2 months later. Number 14. Amarillo Slim was a victim of a savage attack on January of 2009 that forced him to check into the hospital with multiple injuries. Slim was owed $3,000 for a gambling debt and had agreed to take a 4-wheeler as collateral. He was lured to a field where he thought that he would be going to collect his collateral. Instead, he was beaten and robbed. During the vicious attack, Amarillo Slim suffered multiple injuries, including a broken hand, thumb, and jaw. He was also robbed of $8,000 in cash, as well as a diamond ring worth $85,000. Number 15. The godfather of poker, Doyle Brunson, had also many incredible and life-threatening incidents. In an interview with PokerStars, Brunson said that he was once playing poker when a man burst in and shot the man beside him in the head. Brunson said, "I remember the guy's head falling off." Doyle's description of the general poker scene would make most modern pros balk at the thought of even sitting down to play. Brunson used to play on a street called Bloodthirsty Highway, where thieves, robbers, and killings were commonplace, and everyone was somewhat of an outlaw. In another incident back in 1998, 2 masked gunmen robbed him on the doorstep of his then Las Vegas County Club home. Brunson and his wife Louise were handcuffed together as the armed robbers threatened to kill him if he didn't hand over the contents of his safe. Brunson eventually gave them $4,000 in cash and $80,000 in Binions horseshoe casino chips, knowing that if he did not give them any money, they would be awfully mad. Faking a heart attack to get them to leave, Brunson explained that cashing in the chips would prove to be problematic. He even jokingly said, "If they called me, I'll buy them back at half price." A year later, Brunson was one of the lucky high rollers who avoided an armed robbery at the Bellagio casino. Doyle and his fellow nosebleed players were playing in Bobby's room for the big game when the inept robber decided to target the cashier's cage some 10 yards away. The $35,000 was chicken feed compared to the $200,000 or so in cash the big boys of poker had between them. CCTV footage of the robber was quickly released by Las Vegas Metro Police. Number 16. On March 15, 2019, Michael Charles Cohen entered the Bellagio with a gun at around 9:45 p.m. and demanded cash from the cashier's cage located by the poker room. After making off with a reported $35,000, Cohen made his way to the nearby valet exit, at which point he attempted to steal a couple of vehicles but was unsuccessful. In a stroke of good fortune, there was a heavy police presence in the area because a 12-year-old girl had been reported missing nearby. At the valet, officers caught up with Cohen, who then opened fire after the officers demanded he surrender himself. One officer was struck in the chest and another officer returned fire, striking Cohen with what proved to be a fatal blow. However, a bizarre twist to the tale, the investigators tasked with the case later on discovered that the robber who died is the same man who had successfully robbed the Bellagio back in November of 2017. The second heist would have also been a success had there not already been a heavy police presence at Bellagio at the time. The Bellagio's poker room has been a target of robberies in the past because of the access to a potential quick getaway due to a location of a secondary valet stand right off the Flamingo. Number 17. Chauncey Monk is a professional poker player who lives in South Florida. He was robbed at gunpoint and then banned for being robbed. Chauncey Monk was a regular of Omaha High-Low at mid-stakes and played at the Palm Beach Kennel Club like it was his day job. He spent 60 hours a week there. The club itself is considered one of the biggest in Florida, so we are talking of a popular big facility, not just some saloon. It all started in December of 2015 when Monk was returning from the bathroom of the Palm Beach Kennel Club and accidentally dropped $13,000. When he discovered it, he rushed back, but the money was long gone. Someone had picked up the money and left the building fast. Chauncey asked the manager and the security service of the club for help, but they couldn't identify the man's face and couldn't read his car's number plate. Chauncey was infuriated with the cameras, and it really blew his mind that $1 million a month business did not have cameras that could read license plates in the parking lots. And more to that, They told him since the money was picked up from the floor, it was not a theft. Weeks later, Chauncey gets a phone call from the club. The dealer of Kennel Club, one of Chauncey's acquaintances, says that the guy who got Monk's money is in the club. The dealer tells Chauncey he does not want to get involved for the fact that he knows the guy and he does not want to have his customer know that he was involved in him getting caught. Monk rushed to the club, which was just 10 minutes away from his place, but as he came there, the guy was already long gone. Our hero turned to the floor manager and told about the situation, but got no help. Few weeks later, Chauncey was playing his routine session at Omaha at blinds 5-10 with $20 straddle. He had $13,000 after he finished it and decided to walk along to his car at the parking lot 50 meters away from the entrance. Suddenly, a man with a gun attacked Monk and ordered to drop the money to the ground. Chauncey did that and rushed back to the entrance where security was. The security did not see anything out there. Then there was the police and all the needed procedures. Chauncey came back to the club the next day and the manager asked him to not talk about the accident, promising that they'll find the bad guy and will return Chauncey his money. But news spreads fast. Monk lives in one building with other professional poker players, so the robbery was known to all by the regulars. Monk also had a backer who took action in PLO 8 games and he had to let him know what happened. So obviously, people at the kennel also found out. Managers insisted on one important detail. They offered Chauncey an escort, which he refused. It's all lies according to Monk. I mean, what place offers escorts for 2-5 games? Few days later, when every dog in the neighborhood knew about the robbery, Chauncey comes to his job again and he's politely told he's in the blacklist. Permanently. As it turned out later, the dealer whom Monk called was also fired, as well as the floor manager who worked that night. The former worked in the club for almost 13 years before he was fired. Monk had conversations with the lawyer of the Kennel Club in hopes that he could get everything solved. Monk even offered to sign a non-disclosure agreement so he would be allowed to play, but that also got rejected. Later, the police working the robbery case told our hero that Kennel Club had confiscated some of the chips from the robbery. Apparently, whoever robbed Monk tried to send in people to cash in the chips which the Kennel Club was holding on to. The club denied Monk access to those chips also. Monk was pretty depressed, angry and sad, not to mention having taken a huge financial loss. Chauncey needed to play at Palm Beach Kennel Club because of Omaha, because other facilities did not get enough players in this game. As the regulars said, the Omaha games at the club were sweet indeed. Shockingly, even the public's reaction to Chauncey's story was mostly negative. He was accused of being a wimp for asking his way back to where nobody cares for him. They also began to call the robbery staged, and the action casino management took was standard and fully justified. Since the incident, a friend of Chauncey also got a life ban for talking about what happened to Monk at the tables. Aside from that, everyone was still terrified to say or mention what happened in fear of getting banned. The Kennel Club did give Chauncey the money in his security box after he returned the keys to the lawyer's office. Monk tried multiple times to contact the owner of the room with no success.